Okay, well, good afternoon and welcome to the Zoom version of the Michigan Tribute for Victims of Dangerous Dogs. I'm your host, Anne Marie Rogers of Responsible Citizens for Public Safety. We promote public safety through canine awareness education and legislation, and we advocate for victims of dangerous dog attacks. You can find us at rc4ps.org. And I'm sorry we had to cancel our live event in Lansing, but we will reschedule an event at the Capitol at a later date. During today's Zoom gathering, we're going to be hearing from Michigan victims of dangerous dogs, and we'll be discussing their experience with law enforcement and the court system to get justice. And later, we're going to have a Michigan legislative update. And also we'll be discussing BSL, or breed specific legislation, but we like to call it breed safety laws. And also alternatives to BSL that will protect the public. So I'm honored to introduce to you today Colleen Lynn, the founder of dogsbite.org. Dogsbite.org is a public education website that champions the rights of dog attack victims through research, education, and advocacy. Thanks for being here. We're so glad to have you here.
So good to be here. Thank you.
Yes. We also have Letitia Spagnuolo with us on today from Livingston County, Michigan. And Letitia's beloved Yorkie Pearl was killed by her neighbor's Bull Mastiff Pit Bull mix dogs. And she has got a very harrowing testimony. Welcome, Letitia.
Thank you.
And we also have Jill Deminick from Macomb County, Michigan, here with us. And her adorable dog, Buttercup, was killed by a neighbor's loose Rottweiler. And she really had to become a warrior to get any justice for her dog in the city of Warren, Michigan. So thanks for being here, Jill.
You're welcome.
Let's start with Letitia. Why don't you just tell us what happened?
Okay. May 28th, 2022 was a day that changed my life forever. I had put my two Yorkies out to go to the bathroom, and they have a fenced in yard. It's just a chain link fence, which was 4 feet, which is fine for them. And at 9:05, I went to go bring them in because where we live, there are coyotes. And I'm always worried that something's going to happen to them. So I only give them 5 minutes out at night. Well, I went to go get them, and one was at the door barking hysterically. And I'm like, well, what's going on? So I went and I looked around. I'm like, where's the other one? And then I saw a bull mastiff in my yard. I didn't realize at first what was going on, but then when I saw it, he had my dog Pearl in his mouth and he was literally eating her. So without thinking of my safety, I ran out, grabbed the dog by his collar, and I was able to hang him up. And that stopped the attack on Pearl. Literally, lifeless on the ground. I thought she was dead at the time. So during all of this, the dog wound up scratching my hand with his teeth. I'm lucky to be alive. I'm going to kind of get into that. Luckily, a neighbor had heard the commotion and she came out and called 911. And I was hoping that her husband was going to be home because I wanted this dog to be shot at the time because he was just that dangerous. And she called 911 and 911 is like, put the dog out of the fence because we're not going to be able to send anybody right away. And I'm like, I don't want this dog to be loose. He's dangerous. So I tied him to my fence. And then all of this happened within a matter of minutes. And I went over to go see if Pearl was deceased because I really thought she was somehow. And so I picked her up and took her into the house. And I wasn't sure whose dogs these were at the time because there was actually two of them. One of them was still outside of the fence and that one ran off. So luckily that one had not gotten in. Otherwise, I probably would not be talking to you. So I called my sister because we had to get Pearl to the room right away. And I called. In the meantime, I saw one of the neighbors that is known to have bad dogs. I saw them coming down the street and he stopped and got out. And I said, is this your dog? And he wouldn't answer me. He flicked a cigarette at me, came and took the dog from my yard and left. I'm like, we all know who you are. It's like, I don't know what you think you're going to accomplish by this. But at this point in time, I wasn't sure that I was bitten, and I had to get Pearl to the emergency room. So my other sister came and we drove to Michigan State. On the way to Michigan State, Pearl's lungs had collapsed and she started coughing up blood.
Oh,
And when I got to Michigan State, my other sister, who was an RN, came and she's like, "Do you have any bite wounds?" And I'm like, "I don't think so." But then she's like, "Go wash your hands," because I was covered in Pearl's blood. And I went and washed my hands and I had an active wound. So we called back to 911 to let them know that I had been bitten. And the police officer came up to Michigan State to come and take pictures of it. And I said, "Well, are you going to impound this dog now?" He's like, "Nope, all we can do is give a ticket." And I'm like, "I want you to clarify that for me. That's all you can do, but animal control can do something else, correct?" And he's like, "No, all they can do is issue a ticket too." So this dog went home. And I just want to also say that it lived next door to a school bus stop. And there was going to be school that following Tuesday because this was Memorial Day weekend. So I was so infuriated by what had happened. But at that time, Pearl was fighting for her life. So Pearl had to have a 5-hour surgery because her intestines were shredded, her lungs were punctured, and she had had severe internal bleeding as well as her jaw was broken. So I went home and I was so infuriated by the lack of any type of enforcement being done by law enforcement that I started a change.org petition, which is called Justice for Pearl, to try to get some of these laws changed. Because this was again Memorial Day weekend. So our animal control did not come back on duty until Tuesday. When the animal control officer did come back on Tuesday, after I had gotten done talking with the chief of police several times of Fowlerville, explaining that this was ridiculous, the animal control officer said that they were going to seek a show cause to get the dog taken away and possibly euthanized, because I later found out that a lot of judges are not actually putting dogs to sleep that need to be put to sleep any longer, but that's another story. So they were able to get the owners to surrender the dog voluntarily to be put to sleep. So that was the only good thing that happened. But I had made a list of everything that had happened and everything I was going to do to make sure that Pearl got justice, because unfortunately, the Monday of Labor Day, she passed away because her injuries were just too severe. So it was horrible. My mother, Pearl, was her emotional support animal. My mother was not doing very well to begin with, but she had a stroke. Pearl died on Monday. My mother had a stroke on Wednesday and she never recovered. And she passed away a month after that on July 1st of 2022. So I went to the newspapers. Well, actually, the newspaper picked up the story. And then I went to our radio station and I went to another gentleman that has a podcast. And I wanted to get the story out because I really thought that I was the exception to the rule, that dogs were going to be taken care of. But when I found out that you have to have a court order, no matter what a dog does, to get it taken away, and then again, they might not even do the right thing and put it to sleep. I was so angry by that. And then I was really angry when I found out how many complaints have been filed against the owners of these dogs. They were basically breeding these dogs, and they had 21 dogs, bull mastiff pit bull mixes, in a rental house at one point in time. And I don't know how more people did not get killed, more animals did not get killed. I really don't know. But what I'm trying to do now is I've met with my legislature, Bob Bazat, and we're trying to make it so at least law enforcement and animal control, do the minimum and enforce the laws, because, it seems like that always comes back to the problem that they're not enforcing the laws. They go and talk to somebody, but they're not issuing the misdemeanors. They're not actually doing what needs to be done. So, I'm all these horrible stories that we've heard. I mean, I want it to stop, and I want people to be educated about the kind of dog and realize a lot of work and you need to be responsible for them. And I really want to just see, everybody and the legislature and everybody come together and fix these problems.
Good. I agree with you. I mean, that is just a horrible, horrible story. And to see all the things going on in animal control not enforcing the laws. You can have
Yeah.
the best laws in the world, but if there's no enforcement.
That is very right. And
Right.
because the dog that killed Pearl, he had bitten a gentleman just a year before, whereas he was trying to attack this gentleman's children, and they didn't issue them a ticket. They like didn't do anything. They like glazed over it because at that point in time the dog did have a license, and it was just like, okay, you get one free bite. And I'm like, but he was trying to attack children. It's like, I was, I just cannot believe how these dog owners get away with this.
I agree. I agree. It's a serious problem and it's happening all over. So I'm sorry you had to experience that, and I'm sorry for the loss of your mother and of your little dog Pearl. It just
Thank you.
Right.
It's just horrible. And I'm just so sorry that, there's just so many others like me. I was hoping that I would be able to make a difference and make it stop, but it's just gotten worse in the last year, it seems like.
it seems to be, and I think that, but exposing your story, bringing attention to it, and then finding other victims as we unite and make a call out to legislators, it keeps happening. Okay, well, let's talk to Jill and find out about her story. Could you tell us what happened, Jill?
I'm just going to give you guys a heads up that I'm having a really rough day today. I don't know why I'm crying about my dog all day long. I tried to type something up and I think I'll just talk. But this is my dog Buttercup, if I can get it up here. Let me see. That was Buttercup. April 13th of this year, I asked my 15-year-old daughter, Faith, like I said, bear with me because this is a bad day for I miss her. I asked my daughter, Faith, to go and take Buttercup for a walk by herself, which was no surprise because either I walked her every day or Faith would take her. We've done this for 10 years with our dog. And Faith took her up 14 Mile and in Warren, Michigan. That's where I am. So I was putting bikes on our truck because Faith and I were going to take a little jaunt to Stony Creek Metro Park for the day. And so I just asked her to get Buttercup out so that Buttercup got some exercise. And while I was out putting the bikes on the truck, Faith tried to call us or call me. I did not get the message yet because I was outside. And by the time I came in, I couldn't understand why there were several phone calls that came in from her. So of course I listened, and they weren't coming through very well, the messages, because she was in a bad spot or whatever once. Because what happened was Buttercup got attacked. A Rottweiler ran out from their backyard, the neighbor's backyard, and attacked Buttercup. And Faith, thank God, a guy across the street, it's over a major road, so 5 lanes of traffic, heard her screaming and came running across the 5 lanes of traffic and helped get the dog off our dog. At least the dog did try to bite him. This is the second attack from this dog. It's a Rottweiler named Maverick. And the first attack, so there are 2 police reports against this dog. The first attack was on the neighbor dog and the neighbor's owner. So by the time it mauled my dog to shreds, what ended up happening was Faith had to carry our limp dog into the vet that just so happened to be several houses down, but they weren't open yet. They were just moving in. So they had to drive her and our dog by herself to the emergency vet. So by the time Faith got a hold of, I think she got a hold of my husband first. He was on his way over to the emergency vet. Then they got a hold of me, and then I went over. So we obviously made the choice to put her down because, as Leticia said, her injuries were way too severe. I was never going to, force her to stay alive the way she was. They're like, oh, well, you could do surgery and blah, blah, blah. I mean, she had, I think, Anne Marie, you know more about understand this kind of stuff, like the tail being separated. I don't know. I don't understand everything that happened. I just know that when I looked at her, she was all bloody everywhere. And I knew that wasn't the right thing to do. You know, they said, oh, she probably won't be able to walk and she'll be incontinent. I'm like, oh, that's just ridiculous. So we made the choice to put her down. We brought her home in a box and just literally kept her in our living room all day. We called the, animal control came out. Complete joke. That was just a joke. The guy stood in our living room and we were talked to him for actually quite a while. Now, obviously, we had never had this experience before, so I really didn't know how law worked. I didn't know the process. And he kept telling us that there was nothing they could do. The dog's going to stay in the house for 10 days in the owner's house. And we are like, I mean, at the moment, I think we were just like, okay. I mean, we were dumbfounded, but I didn't know what to think other than I thought that was just utterly stupid. But so finally, after I talked to several people, they were suggesting what to do. So I called Channel 4 News. I called Channel 7 News. They came out. They did stories. Macomb Daily did she followed it all the way through. She did many stories on this whole process. And I fought the city for 5 days straight. So that was a Thursday. This happened. I think by Tuesday of the next week, I finally got a call from the mayor and said that they removed the dog from the house. I got good news, Jill. So I'm thinking, yay, right? This is all like kind of done. And I had no idea what was coming around the corner after that. I was just, elated. But then I get another call. Oh, well, it was kind of like, yay, no, yeah, this is what we spent 6 months doing. Oh, but she might get it back. I'm like, what do you mean she might get it back? So it just became this complete nightmare of one big roller coaster. And we've spent 6 months. I just got the email from the city attorney just, I don't know, a day ago, just saying, oh, Jill, good news. I finally got the signed paper of the court order. I mean, this has been 6 months of hell. I learned about 3 weeks after it happened that the owner was being charged with 3 charges: vicious dog at large, and unlicensed. And I'm thinking, yay, finally, right? Here we go. Woohoo, we're going to get something done. And I then learned that her attorney she was going to represent us first. My good friend, Anne Marie knows of her, Linda Kay, had told me that Celeste Dunn was going to represent us. And then I find out days later that she's now representing the owner of the dog. Now, the reason for that is she's an animal advocate and she fights for the animals because she blames the owners. Okay, that's all fine and dandy, but whatever. I don't even want to get into that right now. But so I was warned by my good friend Linda Kay that the city attorney better be strong because she's going to basically get her rear end kicked in by this Celeste Dunn because she's a very strong woman. Well, we definitely learned that. I was warned by my friend to not say anything about euthanizing the dog ever, like never ever talk about putting the dog down, or I will have protesters on my sidewalk that will be out there protesting against us. And so I said I would not say those words, but I just wanted the dog out of the house. The dog needed to leave the house. I warned the neighborhood. I put it on Nextdoor. I told everyone to stay away from that area. Don't go near there because the dog is still sitting there. That was before they took the dog. So the dog, they found out quite humorous. I mean, it's not funny, but it's pathetic, really, how this all goes. The animal control officer, Jeff Randazzo, or the one guy who runs the place, Anne Marie knows him too. He learned that the dog is vicious because they had to have 2 handlers every single day, 3 times a day to take the dog out, and they had to contain every dog on the property to let him out. So finally, they kicked him out of there after 2 months because they were sick of that. And they put him in a place in Roseville, Michigan called Animal House. He stayed there until the July 11th bench trial, which ended up to be a plea deal, basically. She got out of 2 of the 3 charges, including the vicious dog charge. So she got away with that. She got away with, I think it was dog at large. She got, unlicensed maybe, and they just charged her with dog at large, and she paid like a measly $200. And then, so basically, we got our butts kicked in the courthouse every single time we went. There were 3 times we were there. Celeste Dunn literally ruled the roost. She ruled the entire courtroom. And on the last day, on July 11th, she ripped us to shreds in front of everybody. And the judge just sat there. It was just absolutely horrifying. And I really, really, really wish I had been in like in a courtroom before, because I would have never put up with that garbage. She was horrifying. She was nasty to us. I did end up writing a letter to the judge in a nice way. I was very respectful, but I said, from now on, if you ever have anybody in a situation like ours, I pray that you do not allow what she did to us ever again. I wrote a letter to the police commissioner and said that I suggest that you, I don't know what I said, but more or less told him that I, hope that his employees can get trained to do the right thing. I mean, this dog already had a first attack, 1 police report, and that same animal control officer was on the first police report. So he knew about the first attack, but he kept the dog in the house. I was livid. I mean, I've spent 6 months just being angry. And so finally, after July 11th, I thought it was all over. I completely collapsed for a couple weeks. And then I get a message from the city. No, Jill, it's not over. We're still going over the court order details. I'm like, oh my gosh. So that's been since July 11th. Nightmare, complete nightmare. Today's been a rough day. I've taken bats to our mattress down, take a bat to the burning bush outside. I mean, my daughter has got PTSD. We've spent our entire summer avoiding parks or anything. She's gone into like complete panic attacks. But to be honest with you, I will not walk in our neighborhood. We just had another attack right down the street. The animal control drove down our street on Friday evening. And my husband's like, oh, I wonder why animal control's there. Oh, and my daughter, of course, heard those words. So that got her upset. I get a call an hour later, my sister-in-law sobbing. Guess what was running around in the neighborhood? Can we all guess? Pit bull. Attacked her cat, killed it. So now they're charging him with vicious dog and dog at large. We'll see how that goes. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun. And unfortunately, Celeste Dunn knows Anne Marie. So she basically said something to our city attorney, and the city attorney told me not to have Anne Marie show up at the courthouse because she thought that would cause too much trouble. It's just like, it's just been insanity, just sickening, and especially to tell me not to voice things because I would have people protesting on my property or whatever. Unbelievable. These people are really out of control. That's all I know. Out of control. I've never seen so many dog attacks in my life. Truthfully, it's getting sickening and depressed. I mean, I walk around like a zombie, depressed all the time. I do my life, but I'm so sad. I miss her so much. And people are not getting justice. I've never seen anything so deranged in my life. It's out of control. People are getting away with whatever they feel like, and the dogs are glorified like kings and queens. These dogs are put on a throne while we suffer. Mind-boggling. So I was all gung-ho, and then I went to that Grosse Pointe Shores meeting with Anne Marie, and I was like, I walked away from that thinking, this is never going to happen. These people they just come out of the woodwork and fight, and they just bowl you over. Sick.
I'm so sorry that all of this has happened to you, Jill. It is mind-boggling, but it just keeps happening, and there's no good results from anything like this. And you really fought hard, though. You did a lot more than other victims do, forcing them to remove the dog, which is part of the law. I mean, if a dog is a repeat offender, they should have done that. But I think the trend now is to keep the dogs at home. So if they have fewer dogs in the shelters, because they don't want to euthanize them because of
Mhm.
the no kill. Where is the Rottweiler now?
Oh, that's the funny part. So you'll love this piece. So they basically deemed that the dog would be placed in St. Clair Shores under the jurisdiction of Jeff Randazzo at Macomb County Animal Control so that he could be in control of the dog. Well, then that all changed. So then they decided, who knows, they changed all the court order. The court order was constantly changed by Celeste Dunn. She just didn't like anything. All of a sudden, everything changed. So they were going to do a meet and greet. They were going to put the dog 60 miles away at some other house. And they did the meet and greet, and it failed. This dog, Maverick, tried to attack their own dog on their property. So the guy was like, nope, don't want any part of this dog. So now the dog is sitting somewhere, I think in Detroit at a trainer's house. I don't even know. Don't know. That's where we're at with that.
Wow, that is just crazy. I'm just so sorry, and it just keeps happening, and we don't really get much change. So it certainly is frustrating, and it strengthens some people's resolve to enact change, which we really need. I mean, both of your cases, Letitia and Jill, highlight a need for a dangerous dog registry. If they're not going to euthanize the dangerous dogs,
Right.
they need to do something. We really need that in Michigan. They're doing it other places, but
And Anne Marie, I fought with that city attorney literally every day, all day. That's all I did. I spent my entire day, every day, all those months trying. And every time I turned around, I felt like I was getting bashed in the face. It was just mind boggling to experience. You think that you're getting somewhere and then you get knocked down every day. It was like a daily thing. I would go up, oh, thank you. Oh, never mind. And she'd email, never mind, Jill. It was just constant. Very, very messed up. The system, I mean, just how she even got away with this. She got off on everything practically. She does have to pay us the vet bill and the cremation because we chose to do that. And then something else. But other than that, and even the judge said, your client got off easy. He said that to let Celeste done. So, I don't know. It's depressing.
I think it's interesting that we know that attacks involve dog-on-dog attacks far more frequently than attacks on humans, right? So your stories, you are the most common victims, okay? And your dogs are. And yet, so the most common type of attack, which ends typically in a dog's death, and you traumatized, the owner traumatized, probably some bites on their hands as well, that they never realize until a day later because they're too concerned about their dog and trying to save its life. And yet we have so few places have treat this issue seriously at all. And I mean, there's some place it varies all across the U.S. One of the things that we're looking, I'm in Texas, is that there is agreement amongst every single person I've talked to and every legislator I've talked to that we have to address the dog-on-dog attack, and a designation for that, or else it's this continuous thing. It's not. We're normalizing, these death attacks by dogs. Okay, these are not you jockeying in a dog park. Okay, these are extremely aggressive and fatal attacks, and that is a problem with public safety in general. It's not just, oh, a dog's life is property, it's not worth very much. No, this is a very serious public safety issue. And you could talk to victims who've had been holding on to a leash and have been drugged. Oh my God, the Virginia case. And I mean, his whole back was ruined I mean, just a lifelong of surgeries because he was holding onto the leash when his own dog was attacked. And so there's all sorts of human injuries that can happen. And after the first one, if there wasn't a major human injury, there really could be in the second attack. We don't see dog aggression, this level of dog aggression, like going away, trained out of them.
No, and this actually was the third attack that I've had. And I had another Yorkie that was attacked by a pit bull, but he, luckily at the time, it was when I was walking him, and I was able to pull him out of the mouth of the pit bull and pull that pit bull back. Thank God, because he didn't wind up with even a scratch. And then another time, someone's German Shepherd got loose and tried to get me and my other dogs. And so, I mean, and we live in a rural community where you should have more control over your dogs. We're not in a city, and people get these dogs and they don't realize the power they have. Because the one person that had the German Shepherd, it was an elderly woman who was bringing her dog out at the same time that I was walking my dogs past her house, and the dog knocked her over and got loose. So, I mean, it's just people getting dogs that they cannot control and are not capable of. And that's the main issue that I have. It's like, and then when animal control comes, they don't work with them to fix the problem.
Yeah, thanks for Leticia for saying that. I forgot, how could I forget? I guess our Buttercup was attacked one other time by a pit bull in our neighborhood. They did put that dog down. She got away. Our dog, Buttercup, we would have Buttercup run next to the bikes, and she ran like a racehorse. She ran so fast, and I believe that's what saved her life. Not to mention the fact she had like less medals on her. But so that first attack, and that pit bull that bit her, that same pit bull attacked the neighbor's dog 2 doors down and ripped open its belly. I forgot about that, Leticia. Like, how could I have forgotten? But she could have easily died that day.
Yeah, I mean, it's out of control. And it's like, at this point in time, I don't feel secure taking my dogs for a walk without having a gun. And that's terrible. And I don't like to feel like that, but I can't take them anywhere. It's like, it's the PTSD that comes back because I can't go, I don't take the gun for my own safety, only when I take them for a walk.
Yeah, a lot of people are coming to that conclusion. Nobody feels safe in their neighborhoods anymore walking with the influx of dangerous dogs that are running loose, and then they don't have any repercussions legally. Yeah, and it's a huge public safety issue because I think, Colleen, you know how many people have been actually killed. Wasn't there just a woman, she was trying to save her pug from the neighbor's 2 pit bulls, and she got the pug away and ran in the house, and one of those pit bulls followed her right in and killed her. So it's a real issue. It's a very serious public safety issue.
Every year people are killed, sort of intervening. And it's typically pit bull dog aggression. I don't think I've seen it with the Rottweiler case, but the pit bull dog aggression is pretty rampant, and those will lead to fatalities. We do see those more and more. It's so sad.
It
All
is.
right.
And and Colleen, you've certainly heard many horrible victim testimonies over the years, and you've followed and reported on Detroit many times, and in fact, we just had a very tragic fatality. A little 4-year-old boy, Lovell Anderson, was just mauled to death by a loose pit bull last Wednesday, and it's just so tragic, and it's so preventable. And but there's been so many mauling deaths in Detroit, and you've covered them all. So
It does. I mean, and this particular ACO2 came from Montgomery County, Ohio. He had 5 deaths under his belt there. So, it doesn't look like he's doing anything proactive there to prevent these.
no,
And this poor little boy was in his own yard, so fenced in yard. And I don't know if you know, but it sounds to me like they have not located an owner. I mean, they call it a stray when they can't locate the owner, but there is no owner of this dog that attacked, is there?
I've heard varying reports on that. One report said it did belong to a neighbor that was a block away, and that people have seen that dog on the street many times, and nothing's been done about it. So yeah, you were talking about Mark Humph is from Montgomery County, and he's the new director of Detroit Animal Control. And so now we already have 3 fatalities
At least, no, there's more than that, yeah.
on his watch here in well, let's see, he came in after Emma Hernandez, who
That's
was
right.
killed in 2019, but then he was there for Dan Bonacorsi was killed earlier in Detroit this year. I attended his funeral. He was working for the Army Corps of Engineers down there, and he saw those 2 pit bulls in that vacant building. And apparently he was trying to rescue them or make sure they had food and they weren't strays. And they killed them. But the owners of those pit bulls who would leave them there from time to time to maybe guard the building, I don't know. He mentioned that his boy got another body. So there was another body in September of 22, not just this past, but the one before. And the medical examiner said, yes, there was dog contact, but that there were external circumstances that hadn't been examined. So we don't know. We never heard about that, publicly until they talked about it. So yeah, but I don't think Mark Humph is doing what he could be doing. He's following the pit bull lobby protocol. he tells their ACOs, just shoo them away. If you see loose dogs, shoo them away. I heard that from a Detroit animal control officer. So that's a real problem.
Yeah, and I think that there was clearly an uprising after Xavier's death and after Emma's death to potentially, be it, I think that there was a sterilization law floated for the male dogs to sort of try to get that under control, because male dogs are the topmost biters anyways. And everything that gets introduced gets shot down. And this time, no movement. No one said a single word about doing something about it. It was just, it's so sad because he was in his own yard. And so no city councilor spoke out, no nothing. So we have, it is normalized in Detroit. It just is.
It seems to be, it really seems to be, and it's just a shame. I've been down to Detroit City Council. They did pass something called Emma's Law. Not a state law, but they did add some extra parameters in a Detroit city ordinance, but it doesn't seem to be followed or addressed in any meaningful way, because clearly fatalities are still happening. So I don't know what it's going to take. Really, they threw some money at animal control, but I don't see any significant changes so far. It's really it's frustrating.
Anne Marie,
You're
Can
working, yeah. Go ahead.
you mentioned something that I just remembered, because I did go to our city council meetings to speak, and my daughter even got up and spoke, and they got in a little fight up on the platform. Were you there that day, Anne Marie, when Ron Papandrea said the laws are there, they just need to be enforced, or no? Were you there that night with me? Maybe not.
I think I did hear him say that, but yet they're still not enforcing them.
Right, but you had said something about that just a second ago. They're not following. So, they were like, "Oh, Jill, we're going to change some of these ordinances here, and you're going to be a part of that process." And then Jeff Randazzo at Macomb County Animal Control on plea deal day said, "You're going to be part of this whole thing that we're going to start changing some ordinances." And I noticed myself in the last few weeks going, "Why bother? Because they're not going to do anything anyway. And I remembered what he said too, that the laws were there, they just need to be enforced. Because it did say right in there, I read it myself, that he had the right to take that dog that day. Well, if he's not going to, then what? Okay, you can change the ordinances, but you could change them, but they don't do anything. What's the purpose of changing them? And that's why I wrote a letter to the commissioner saying you might want to like train your people to follow these ordinances, because clearly, I guess they don't know what to do. So that's my frustration, is why fight when nobody's going to follow what they're being told to do anyway? That's how I feel. I've watching this for 6 months. I know you guys have watched this a lot longer than me, clearly, but just in the 6 months I've watched it, it feels hopeless
And that's how
because nobody cares. That's how it feels.
and that's exactly, you know, my feeling
Go ahead.
at night. It was, you know, that Pearl's life was only worth a ticket. And they originally didn't charge him with anything other than civil fines. The prosecutor refused to do it. So I had to fight and we got a misdemeanor on him, but it was a $250 fine that in court cost yet to. But they did also put the restitution on there because these people, they didn't have insurance. Pearl's vet bill was $10,000 and plus my pain and suffering. So I'm like, I'm suing them, but I'll probably never get any money. And what makes me so angry is that they knew this dog was bad. They could have gotten insurance because they knew, but they choose not to. And then we also had out here in Livingston County and Fenton, where a bull mastiff that was under quarantine killed its owner as animal control was coming to take the dog away for a show cause. That was the day I was going to meet with Bob Bazat and he canceled it, which was really weird. And I don't know if it had anything to do with that, but it was like so serendipitous. I'm like, oh my goodness. But dealing with it, I'm like, at least in this one, it was his owner and that's bad enough. But thank goodness it didn't go and kill somebody else.
Yeah, I think that dog that killed its owner there in Livingston County was on some kind of a quarantine and had previously attacked someone else, which is why it was in quarantine. And then it ended up killing its owner. So,
and my thought is if they had just taken it in, even if they just for that 10 days can take those dogs away, because these people that are letting their dogs do this, what's going to change now? Nothing. These dogs are going to go out and do it again.
yeah, see, that's where the shelter policy has to change. This is going hand in hand with this, what they call the no-kill philosophy, the no-kill movement, where they simply are leaving the dangerous dogs for home quarantine now instead of bringing them in to the shelter, because they would have to make room and then euthanize more dogs, which they're desperately trying not to do. So it's really frustrating. So I think yeah, we're really going to now have a discussion about other options. I mean, what can be done? And we need to talk about whether we talk about breed specific legislation, which isn't very popular now. In fact, Michigan has just brought a new package of bills in that will likely pass, and they're called preemption bills. And what that will do is strip the authority of local government, units of government, to enact or to enforce any law that's breed specific, which is disappointing. Because BSL isn't always a ban on a certain breed of dog. It can be anything that, is focused around the most dangerous dogs that cause the most severe injuries. Typically, pit bulls, Rottweilers, sometimes Shepherds, Huskies. They get all these breeds from the, the data, the actuarial data. But
Well,
yeah, so
Saginaw County, only because it's, I mean to interrupt, but it's really interesting. So they have a top 5 breeds that are dangerous. So they've made the dangerous dog breed list, top 5 breeds. That is where their BSL kicks in. So it's not, that can change. It's probably not going to change. Yeah, I mean, the top 5 dog breeds that are getting dangerous declarations are probably going to be the same ones. Maybe the XL Bully will come up there, but I don't really see any changes. So there's that, sort of approach to it. And then there's some smaller communities that have mandatory pit bull sterilization. Now they had some dog fighting problems there, some dog breeding problems, some pit bull breeding. And so, they have done well. I know that they tried to fight some of these bills in the past. But yeah, I mean, I think that the other side always wins when they say it's a breed ban, because this is not what it is. And I've looked at, the 1,200 orders we've collected. So about 46% are banned, and the greater majority are not. It's like it's a licensing requirement. It's how a dog is secured requirement. It's a special permit requirement of some, or a declaration of potentially dangerous. So there's all sorts of things that make sense that have nothing to do with the ban at all.
Exactly. And I think that's where a lot of the confusion and the the pushback comes from. And then people not realizing how government works. Even if there was a ban, that doesn't mean they're going to be, going door to door and rounding up the dogs and, putting them down. But yeah, there's a lot of different kinds of alternatives. You were talking about Ypsilanti Township that has a mandatory spay-neuter requirement for pit bulls, which has worked out beautifully for them because they've seen probably at least a 50% reduction in the number of pit bulls coming into their shelter. So I think that's a great place to start, because
It is.
clearly, pit bulls are the number one type of dog. Pit bulls and their derivatives, mixes, are the number one type of dog in shelters. They're wildly overbred, and that has to stop. Why we used to promote spay neuter for everything, and so getting grants and things to push that low cost spay neuter kind of thing, I think is still a really wonderful idea. But there are other things that we can discuss. I know. Colleen, weren't you going to talk about international BSL and things that they're doing? How many countries have some form of BSL? And
We've got jurisdictions in 62 countries now. There's obviously language barriers, so we're limited in how we can identify countries with BSL. Okay. Sometimes there'll be like an English speaking article that will talk about Malaysia, something like that, or Malaysia will have English speaking newspapers. So if there's jurisdictions in 62 countries, that means there's a lot more countries with BSL. And 49 of those countries that we have recorded, it's a national level law. So whether that be an importation restriction, or say dog declared hazardous or dangerous, it's a national level law. The US is sort of different because we have 50 states, not every country does. So it's simpler for them to have a national law. So, we are the US is the outlier here, not the developed countries in the world. Okay. Because the developed countries in the world, Europe, Asia, parts of Russia, have restrictions on these dog breeds, the same dog breeds. Every now and again, there's something very specific to a region, but the same ones always come up. It's the pit bull, the doggo, sometimes Rottweilers, sometimes not, because they're used in police work too. And then a variety of different mastiffs, which the doggo is one variety of that mastiff. And that they're all over the world, so yeah, it is a problem that, Europe is, and the other thing we talked about was mandatory. Okay, so you're gonna love this. Mandatory insurance for all dog owners, period, the end. If we want to pay for injuries, people who are injured, this is what has to happen. Now, that's sort of like been, one thing that Dogs Bite has thought about for a long time. And I was just looking before this meeting today, and it just came into effect in all of Spain. in September 2023. So regions of Spain had already had this, but then Spain, like Madrid, and so now it's part of the Animal Welfare Act. It's mandatory liability insurance for civil lawsuits, is to protect victims, is to protect the dogs if your dog is attacked by another dog. It's for all of those reasons, and it's part of the Animal Welfare Act. I think that's where we need to be moving. And we live in an insurance-driven world and country, and Europe. Look at what they just did in Spain. I mean, you can begin to see that being adopted in other places. So I do think that while it might be a tough concept for people to swallow here in the US, it's the right thing to do. You won't pay very much insurance if you have a small dog, right? And then the other thing we talked about was this interesting thing in South Carolina. So these dog pack attack laws. So they passed a law down in Florence recently where if a dog is running in a pack with 3 or more animals, it doesn't say 3 or more dogs, it says 3 or more animals, it's immediately declared dangerous. Because we all learned when we were 4 or 5 that a pack of dogs can be dangerous. Not all of them are, but that's not the point. The point is they're running loose and they're in a pack and there's pack mentality. And so one of the, it should be so simple, and it's obviously non-breed specific, is that a pack of dogs represents a danger. Therefore, if you own one, and if the 3 or 4 or 5 dogs are running loose, that is such a different level of responsibility, and the penalties must be much greater. And I just love the fact that down there it's like, no, we just have to catch them running at large, and that gets a dangerous declaration like that. That's the right way to think about things, because things can get out of control really fast in a pack, and we just don't know.
Absolutely. I think so too. And that could, for different states, I think they have more terrible pack attacks in the southern states.
So too.
I can't recall any pack attacks in Michigan, but I do think that's a good law, because there is pack
Marie, there was that one pack attack that was out here in Livingston County where the bulldogs got and ate the 2 people.
It was 2007.
I
Yeah.
mean, was it just 2?
It was like 7. I think it was 5 or 7. It was a whole pack. It was a lot of them. And that kind of had some, extenuating circumstances, because the dogs were not being fed, but they were dangerous beforehand. So there was, I think, at least 5 or 6 of them, and they got loose and they packed up and got, I think he was like in his 80s or 90s, and then like a 56-year-old woman. So, I mean, that was terrible. And my sister, who was a nurse at the time, she was going to come to this, but she's out of the country right now. She has horror stories that she can tell you about what she heard from the EMS people that responded. So I'm like, I don't want to get into that because it was horrible. It was just like, oh my goodness. But yeah, that's the only known pack attack, and that actually happened south of where I live.
Wow, in the same county. too.
Yes, in the same county. Yep. And
That's where State Representative Bizat was the sheriff presiding in the county when
Yes.
it happened. I didn't realize it was that many dogs, American bulldogs. I thought but I think that the owner did see some prison time on that.
Yeah, she got like 4 years, I think. And but I did not realize this until like later on when I read some of the other stories. Those dogs, and I'm not sure which ones, they had killed a puppy like 6 months before all this happened. So again, it goes back to that their aggression, they start attacking other animals, and then it goes up to humans. And I mean, that's, even the animal control officer said that once they start doing that, they get more brazen. And it would have been the next. And sorry that Pearl is dead, but before that dog, it tried to kill a 2-year-old boy. And that I could not live with myself if that had happened.
No, that's outrageous that they didn't do anything after that. So just terrible. Well, I'm still a proponent of BSL because I think that anything that's more breed specific, geared towards the most dangerous dog breeds, are preventative. They're a preventative measure as opposed to being a reactive law. But and I think, Colleen, didn't you know about? I mean, Britain is going to ban XL bullies throughout the whole region of Britain. I think it'll include England, Scotland, and Wales.
That's right.
You know?
That's right. So the Prime Minister announced that on September 15th. Now that announcement came a day after a man died who was viciously attacked by 2 XL bullies. And that was, someone took a video of that and it leaked to social media. So a lot of people over there saw this horrific, horrifying attack. And I don't know, I mean, listen, advocacy to control the XL bully and victims groups over there have been doing really well. I mean, this has been a rising, ongoing issue since really the pandemic. We saw the XL bully fatalities in the UK really start to go up. And so it's a rising concern there. And he finally addressed it. I know that the other party commented, because I wanted to understand where both parties stood. And they were like, you should have addressed it earlier. The Labour Party said, so they're both on board. And I just got a note before this happened that obviously the Prime Minister talked back then in September about talking to experts about how they're going to identify this dog breed. Because again, there's only one kennel, truly a big one, that does recognize it, and that's CUKC. So the Britain kennel does not recognize, but there is a breed standard that's been written. So we want to hear how they're going to identify it, and what the experts are saying, pro and con, about the ban. It looks like there's going to be sort of a feedback session at the end of November. And so Dogs Bite will probably be part of that to help some of the local groups who are advocating to say, do this ban. And I mean, the thing with the UK doing a ban is that so many countries followed the 1991 Dangerous Dog Act that the UK was one of the first to implement, and that spread all over the world. Okay, and so banning the XL bully in the UK means that it doesn't mean that if the XL bully population is tiny over in some other country, they're going to take a signal from the UK. They don't want it to grow at all, and they will ban. As long as there's a way to identify them, they will follow the UK, because there are dangerous breeds on these banned lists, like the Fila Brasileiro, the Brazilian Mastiff. When have you ever seen one? I think their population numbers are really small, but they're on almost every single ban list, whether it's a South American country, or it's a European country, or it's a Caribbean country. So I believe that the real, it's just getting started with the XL bullies. And when the UK goes through with this, and they said they will, we'll see, it's not done yet, that we will see a number of other countries respond within the next 5 years or so.
Well, I sure hope that they do respond in kind. I hope they all start, because really, I mean, XL bullies, we all know they're pit bull derivative, mixed with something bigger, and then
What's interesting is that because they have a ban, they're more specific about their language. They follow the 1977 American Dog Breeders confirmation for pit bulls in the UK that are banned. Now, we've been seeing large pit bulls for years, for eons here. And when a giant XL bully is involved in a fatal attack here, police will say it was a really big pit bull. So, because we don't have a ban, no one is having to make that distinction. No one's doing measurements here, right? And so I think that they do have to over there in the UK. And so they really specify it as an American XL bully. But generally we know here that it's a large pit bull. Pit bulls have gotten larger and larger. They've gotten bullier and bullier over time. That is the entire point of the American Bully breed. And we've seen these sizes go from 45 to 90. We don't even think about anymore. When I started this, the males were typically around 45 pounds. So it's just not a common pit bull today. So it is interesting how the language is so different between the
Language
countries.
changes, and I don't know the difference between an American bulldog really and an XL bully, if they're but
Right.
they'll work it out, and we'll get a ban over there. But we should probably also talk about, because BSL is unpopular here in the United States, even though it works. There's all kinds of alternatives that people have been discussing, and you already mentioned Florence, South Carolina, with the pack declaring any pack of animals 3 or more, ruling it dangerous. So I think that's I think that's a good thing. And then, what else? I like the idea of a dangerous dog registry. I think that Jill's case certainly shows a need for that, because we've got this repeat offender killer Rottweiler, and the law says that a judge shall order it euthanized once it's been deemed dangerous, but in this case they didn't, and they were sending it here and there, and nobody knows where it'll end up. It could be coming to a neighborhood near you. But if they had a dangerous dog registry, similar to like a sex offender registry, with parameters for owners, and so people could know where those dangerous dogs are, and I think they've done that in Virginia after a horrific mauling case. So I think that, and mandatory bite disclosure requirements would really help to save a lot of lives. I think shelters need to do much better, disclosing a dog's temperament instead of masking it with, flowery language and whatnot. I mean, the public relies on them to tell them the truth, and it really, even though that's their goal, is to place dogs, they're setting the dogs up for failure. It's just not a good policy. You don't want to give dogs with a bite history, even if it's a beagle, to a family with kids, and then have the dog go home and bite the child or another dog that's there if they're dog aggressive. I mean, they really have to disclose this so that it's a matter of informed consent. That's what I think. What do you?
I would agree, Anne Marie. And then I think another thing that's really important, and this has been from my perspective, is that animal control needs to work with these people to correct the issues, not just issue tickets, come out and say you need to get a bigger fence, or you neutered, or you need to do something different, and then follow up with them and say, if you don't do this, we're going to take the dog away from you possibly, or we're going to give you a fine. Because as we all know, the one thing that seems to motivate people is if they find out that this is going to cost them a lot of money. Because that was the owners of Pearl, that was the only reason why they put their dog to sleep voluntarily, because they were thinking that was going to have everything go away. And I'm grateful that the police and animal control were able to convince them to do that, but it shouldn't be that it's going to be 6 months for a show cause. And the animal control had been to that location, I want to say 10 times, regarding them and their dogs. So why didn't they work out a plan to fix these issues and make sure that didn't happen to anybody else, especially after the bite the year before? So, I mean, that would be something I would like to see, is that they work a plan and they follow through on it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that Colleen, weren't you working with Tom Rock and
Yes.
Thomas trying to get something going in Florida after?
Also, Bonnie too, you should definitely join in here. So Pam Rock is a USPS letter carrier. She was killed in 2022, and she this pack of 5 dogs, they were all like pit bull type dogs, so they're huge and powerful. They got out of a horrible fence line. They had gotten out multiple times in the past. They had attacked in the past, and they attacked and killed her. And now this particular owner had tried to surrender his dogs to the local shelter, and they said, no, because we're no kill. And he said, but I can't manage them anymore. This was after a very serious attack where a person was seriously injured, and they said no. And then the dogs got out and they killed Pam. So this family, now she's part of 13 siblings. It's an amazing family. So her 12 surviving siblings are working with multiple legislators in Florida right now. The Rock family really wants a dangerous dog registry for the entire state. And this is so interesting because it's a hard thing to get at. They want a way to accelerate how to get the dangerous dog designation. In their case, what happened? Why these dogs should have been declared dangerous after that very violent attack several months previously, whenever that had been, but it was fairly recent, I believe. And so they'd like that to sort of operate at a state level too, by having this dangerous dog registry. And of course, at the end of the day, a county shelter that we pay to take care of dangerous dogs should never be able to say no to a surrender. Never. I mean, that is what we pay them for. And it's unfortunate to them because we've got an irresponsible owner. So maybe they charge him, they do something, I don't know, but they cannot say no. And if these dogs cannot be rehabilitated, and they probably can't be, okay, if they've been living with 5 dogs, breaking out of a terrible fence and attacking people, it's not likely they're rehabable, and they will be put down. But they should, I mean, there should be a mandatory acceptance, because in the fatal dog attack world, I have seen this multiple times. A surrender, a terrible attack, an attempt to surrender. Once in Texas, like, well, they had to have an appointment in 5 days because they were they were still packed. So the dogs killed within 5 days. So the dogs couldn't even wait for a 5-day waiting period. I mean, the owner was like, his fence had blown away. There was no place to keep, it was like 5 or 7 pit bulls. He had no means to keep them. They had viciously attacked a man and killed a dog. And like, well, we'll take them in 5 days. Well, someone died. So, I mean, this should not ever be the case. When something is dangerous and vicious and a horrible attack, there must be some type of mandatory acceptance of intake of these dogs. And that's why we pay them. It really is.
NACA, the national organization, which is gone over to the other side, NACA. That's what they because I subscribe. I have a $25 a year associate membership just so I can see what they're doing, and they have that's their advice. Do anything to keep the dog out of the shelter. Try to work with young. Well, most animal control people are not dog trainers, and they're not, and even dog trainers don't work with these vicious dogs. I know that, but so that, to me, that national organization, I wish got called out more. Because that's written in their policies now. And they have never had one in service that I can see, because I look and see what's coming up on human fatalities or anything that involves safety to human beings or their pets. So feel very strongly about that. I did want to ask a question. In Michigan, Anne Marie, or you all that are living in Michigan, are most of your animal control people sworn officers or not? Because that's another issue I think is a big thing. I wish they were all sworn police officers, but I don't know how it is where you live. Is Michigan much the same way?
The animal control officers for publicly funded animal control agencies.
I understand.
We're sworn officers. Not everybody carries a gun. Not every animal control is part of a police department. So they're not police officers. at
So,
all.
so in other words, though, so animal control goes out, they cannot arrest anybody on the spot. Now, in Virginia Beach, they can because they're sworn police officers. But in most of our communities, you know, they stripped, a lot of chiefs of police didn't want it in their budgets, so they've stripped animal control. Oh yeah, no guns. I mean, you know, I mean, they can't arrest you on the spot. They can issue a summons. That's true, but they don't have police powers. So I think that you know, it illustrates that there is a I think police officers, most of them, have their first duty to prevent human life, to prevent deaths of human beings, you know, and public safety. And I don't think that is the feeling anymore in most animal control. Once you've taken away all their police powers, I can sort of see how they resent that, and that there may be less likely to be very aggressive. And we do have a dangerous dog registry in Virginia. It is true. It is not easy to get a dog on there, but the number of bites we have that require hospitalizations, the numbers that I've been able to get, we have a whole lot more people going to the hospital than we ever have dangerous dogs. I mean, we put 1 or 2 a year on, maybe, and it's got to be real bad, I'm sure. It has to be you going to court, and just like Jill and like you all, some of you all have done, and just keep on. But you have to wear them down. I don't know any other way to put it. So that's my 2 cents.
Thanks, Bonnie. Yeah, and Virginia does have a
You do.
dog registry, as well as I think they just also enacted a mandatory bite disclosure.
We do have, yes, we do. And we all worked. I had a lot of, and y'all join up with your other victims in your state, because that's one of the things that's one of the ways we were able to get that passed. And we had a very strong legislative person who was with in animal control. Unfortunately, is retired now. So so in fact, this year, VACA, our Virginia Animal Control, because I'm a member of that, an associate, had Best Friends Animal Society as a speaker. We have the Big Tommy campaign, which many of you have read about. We had a horrible crime here about 5 years ago, 4 years, where the dog was set on fire. Richmond Animal Control picked it up. It was horrible. The poor thing lingered for 3 days before to much publicity. They have a girl who is, I mean, she is really good, and much publicity, much social media. Everybody's, you know, heartbroken. Hospitals are given things. It was a terrible crime. The young man, when they did arrest him, was sentenced to 5 years. And Tommy has become, we have license plates now for Tommy that have Lovable on the side. We have little children and got themselves on national television writing letters pretending to be the dogs in the shelter. I mean, it's really, and everybody, oh, it's so wonderful, but people don't really realize, you know, this is, it's a very, I've been sick. I'm sorry, I have laryngitis. I'm not speaking very well, but it's an effort to promote these dogs as safe for family pets. And that's just all there is to it. So, but it was a terrible crime. I mean, but they have made, they got $90,000 in immediately from the public. And then the license plates, of course, and it's almost exclusively, I'm sorry to say, young women, that youngish women that are this big supporters. They show their license plates. If I see one, I have a little brochure, Colleen has seen it. If I do happen to see one in Roanoke, I look around real fast, I put it on the car. So it's got the last year's fatalities, so on it. But anyway, so, you know, in the public relations arena, they seem to be winning, you know, right now. But I don't think that'll last forever, so don't give up. That's what I think.
Thank you, Bonnie. Well, I'm not going to give up. This is my life's mission now. But yeah, I think they started that dangerous dog registry.
We
and
did.
the
Yeah.
Bite disclosure registry after, was it Margaret Colvin was her name?
Margaret Colvin, yeah,
adopted-
in Virginia Beach. It was 90, Miss Colvin, I think she was 93. These two gals that had run a quote rescue there, that dog had been through 4 states. It had been through Maryland, New York, one of these transfer things, we transfer them out, let it be somebody else's problem. And so it had been through, I think it started in New York, Pennsylvania, Maryland, and before it was in Virginia. And this young woman got this dog for her mother, had a shock collar on it. The dog had a shock collar when they let it out of when they adopted it. And she had taken that off. And that night, I think it was that night or the next night, it killed her 93-year-old mother. So, so that was one, yes, that, and we had, like I say, Kathy Strauss was with us then, whose knows Mark, by the way, because Mark worked here in Virginia at one point. Did y'all know that? Yeah.
I'm not surprised, but I
Yeah.
don't think I knew that.
He did. He was involved in the Vic case, which of course is, Vic and Katrina, one of the biggest drivers of this no kill, I think, that's ever happened. Keep fighting.
Well, we will, but yeah, that was a horrific case. A transferred dog, and I think it was within hours.
It was within hours that it killed
Option
her
of
mother.
that.
Yeah. And we had a dog with a shock collar killed Evangeline Brooks, a pillar of I say the Black community, the whole community in Richmond last January, killed by a dog that had a shock collar on. And there were no charges against the owner that I've ever, she's walking in her own neighborhood, or she's a retired teacher walking in her own neighborhood down the street to visit her sister, I think. And the dog attacked and killed her. And I do not understand that for the life of me, why there was no charges brought, except that the prosecutor's husband had just died. Their Commonwealth's attorney, the head person up there, of course, they have several of them. But anyway, I don't really know what happened about that, why there's no charges. I just don't know.
It has a felony dog attack statute, but it's a difficult one because I think they have to prove this wasn't the first attack and so forth and so on. Not every felony dog attack law works that way, but I think Virginia has a really strict one.
If it gets enforced,
It gets enforced.
if it gets enforced, it looks like we're all the same.
Yeah. And so just having to prove that it was previously designated dangerous and then it killed someone. That scenario might happen once in 200 years.
Mhm.
Okay. So, I mean, what we need are, at least in Texas, the way our felony dog attack law works is that it just has to escape its property, run off property and kill. And that's negligence right there. They don't have to prove, prior knowledge of vicious behavior. So on and so on. It's great to have it in a case. And oftentimes it's true because the dogs do have a history, but you don't have to do it. And I know that law was passed in 2007, and it was really strict when it first began because there weren't a lot of court rulings about it. But every time it was brought up and, sort of like challenged, the courts in Texas would broaden it. And so prosecutors had to prove less and less and less until it finally became, it leaves your property and, and it goes on someone else's property and kills them. And again, there can't be circumstances of trespassing or anything weird like that. But generally speaking, at least I think that's a fairly broad law, and like the California law and the Michigan law too. It's difficult. You have to have very specific elements happening to show this sort of criminal mindset. When, do we really have to do that? I mean, not to go back to the UK, but a dog can be dangerously out of control. No intent is necessary. It can be out of control in your house and kill your kid, and you're still going to jail in the UK, which would be sort of unheard of concept here in the US. But if a dog is dangerously out of control, no matter where it is, shouldn't really matter. And you really are the owner. So, it doesn't, there are cases where there's more criminality than other cases, but still, I think that there should be strong penalties across the board when someone is gravely injured or killed.
got a couple of senators and a couple of state reps, but no one yet has sponsored it. I'm trying to get them to add a truth in pet adoption law and a dangerous dog registry, whether we split them up into two laws, because there is one legislator that is working to update our Michigan Dangerous Dog Act 426. It's from 1988. And I think it would be perfect to add the dangerous dog registry to that,
Mhm.
put it all together. And then I'm still trying to find somebody that would sponsor this truth in pet adoption law or the mandatory bite disclosure bill that would, so that shelters, and it would include animal rescue groups, which are wholly unregulated in
I know.
Michigan, and private humane societies would all, that it would be a documentation and disclosure requirement. They must document the dog's behavior, and this is for any breed. It's not breed specific, but yeah. So that's what we're trying to do: make a non-breed specific, so it's a little more palatable for everybody. But these two laws passed, from what I understand, with little pushback in Virginia and in California, and it was done for the purpose of public safety and for the appropriate placement of dogs. So, yeah, we have a lot of work to do yet, and but it's getting a little bit later, and we've covered a lot of ground today, and we've talked about a lot of things, and we've heard some great ideas about laws that could really work to protect public safety. And that's our goal. We are trying to protect, our families, our pets, the public in general. And so we want to work toward anything, any type of law that's going to reduce the number of severe dog attacks. So I want to thank everybody for coming. Thank you, Colleen. Keep up all the great work. And thank you for coming, Jill and Bonnie and everyone who's participated. And we're here to support each other.